Hello and welcome to the 10th tutorial that looks at the spreadsheet section of the GCSE ICT Unit 2 controlled test. Now, what we're going to be looking at in this tutorial is we're going to be looking at counting the number of players. So, it's a very simple formula this. It's called a count formula, or count function I should say. So what we do is we go into our spreadsheet, which we've been creating as we've been going along. And what I'm going to do is, again, this is kind of a summary section of the spreadsheet. So here's all my information. And I just want to be able to find out by looking at the bottom here, rather than having to look through and count all of the players. It's going to tell me the number of players. Now, there's two different types of count functions, well, of the basic count functions. One of them allows you to count the number of numerical entries in a particular area. So let's say if I wanted to count out how many numbers I've got in this section here. So if I do in here, I'm going to do equals count, open the brackets, and again we can always click on the function that we want and press tab to bring it in. And it's set up ready to go, and I know that I've got 20 numbers here because they're listed 1 to 20. But if I highlight those just to show you and close the brackets, press enter, it's counted how many numerical entries are in that particular section or in the area that I highlighted. So just to check that this is working then, if I go down here and I do 21, 22, we now know that if I change the cell references to K29, because I've added two more in, so K28 has got a new number in, and K29, change that to a 9, it should change to 22. And there we are. So that's your basic count function. But that's actually to count the amount of numerical entries, so the amount of entries which are numbers. So let's get rid of that. Let's say now that I actually want to count a certain amount of cells, or how many entries I've got in a particular part of my spreadsheet, but they're not made up of numbers. So what I need to do now is use a COUNTA function. And the COUNTA function, the difference that it has between the count function is simply that it counts text entries rather than numerical entries. So remember, if you were going to be adding up how many entries there were with numbers, you use a count function, but in this case I'm going to use a COUNTA. So down here in my summary section, I want the cell next to my number of players to display how many there are. So again, we set up our formula in the normal way with an equals, and I do count A, but I'm going to take it from here, click there and press the tab key, and I'm going to highlight the amount of people. So I'm going to close the brackets and press enter. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to format the cells, because as you can see at the moment it shows 12.00. So just put it to 2 decimal places. Now let's say for example that this was not present, which it always should, because you should always have headings and data labels to make sure that the person viewing the spreadsheet can see what each particular bit of data is. But I'm going, just because at the moment this could be 12 o'clock, so what I'm going to be doing is going to format cells, and I'm going to change a number, because remember it's just a basic number, and I'm going to change the decimal places to 0 because I want it to show as a whole number, because there aren't 12.1 players, there aren't 12.2 or 12.3, that would be impossible. There's got to be a whole number, so I'm going to change it to 0 decimal places just to make sure. And when I press OK, we can see that it's come up with 12 entries. And if we just check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there we are. There's 12 players in the team, which I've used there a nice formula. And a way just to demonstrate why this is useful to use a formula again is, one, as you'll see this is a consistent theme now, I could have in there over 100 people, and it would be difficult to actually find out how many there are. But let's say I insert a new row. Insert a new row there because we've had a new player that's come into the team. And okay, maybe I'd have to change all of this information as well, which I could do because my drop-down menu applies there as well. Same for here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a new text entry. So let's say Tom Hearn, something like that. Just a random name I've made up. Did you see there? Number of players changed to 13. And that's because I've added in a new entry, a text entry. So if I do Control and Z to get rid of that, it changes it back to 12. Now Control Z is just the keyboard shortcut for undo. So there we are. That's a basic count A function and even a count function. So if we have a look at the mark scheme, this one here, we've now looked at count functions. And that's also worth then another mark if you weren't going to use an if statement. So that's quite a nice little way of just adding up groups of either text entries or numerical entries.